Thanks for checking back in with us as we talk New England Patriots football on Pat's Probe with Evan Lazar of CLNSmedia.com and Patriots Press Pass on YouTube. Another win, another week, Evan. And now the big clash on Monday night coming up with the division rival Buffalo Bills. So this should be a good one.
Yeah, the Bills game is going to be a game of a couple years in the making, I would say, because the Patriots last year obviously were not at the peak of their powers, did not really have a team that could go toe to toe with Buffalo in a fair fight. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this Patriots team stacks up to the Bills, who are the class of the division right now, who are the team that I think the Patriots are still chasing, even though they're technically ahead of them in the standings. It feels like Buffalo is ahead of them in terms of team development and talent and quarterback development, certainly. But going back to the Titans game here for a second, I think that this shows in a lot of ways what makes Patriots fans and us in the media here locally spoiled. And that is a 36-13 win wasn't good enough, right? It wasn't good enough. And it wasn't because of the final score. It's because when you actually watch the game and break down the game and go sequence to sequence, there was a lot of holes in this performance by the Patriots. Sure. You know, the offense starts 1 for 6 in terms of touchdowns. They get into the 35-yard line in Tennessee 6 straight times at the top of the game, and they come away with 1 touchdown. They kick 6 field goals in this game. Offensively, driving the ball with ease. Mac Jones throws for over 300 yards, but they bogged down in the red zone and in those key scoring situations that cost them points. Defense gives up 270 yards rushing against the Titans without Derrick Henry. And you start to look at some of these things and you do wonder, are there more questions about this team now than necessarily answers? And I think that it's tough for Patriots fans because on one side of the fan base is sitting here saying they're 8-4. They're in a great spot. They've had a great year. They just beat the Titans 36-13. Some people will even say the number 1 seeded Titans, even though it really wasn't the number 1 seeded Titans with all the injuries. What gives? Why are we talking about this like they lost the game? But because we've been so spoiled over the last 20 years, we know what championship caliber teams look like, right? We know what the product looks like and what it needs to be in order for the Patriots to compete for a Super Bowl. And what the Patriots put out there on Sunday against Tennessee was not Super Bowl caliber execution. If they played that game against a healthy Titans team, or if they played that game against Buffalo, they probably lose, right? Sure. They probably lose that game. And I think that that's where a lot of us are coming from in terms of being a little bit negative coming off a 23-point win, which sounds bonkers, but again, we know what aesthetically what it looks like when a team is executing at a championship level, and the Patriots were not doing that on Sunday against the Titans.
And if the fans felt that way, then you could be rest assured Bill Belichick will be feeling that way for sure. But yeah, look, I get it, and you hit it on the head when you said spoiled. And that's exactly what the Patriot fans have been, and deservedly so. But this is also what happens when you have a winning football team. And this is a good thing, because you have a winning football team that is not playing their best football. It can still just blow out another team. That's a very good thing. And because I think we take a look at what's going on in the NFL from week to week. And there's so many crazy things and so many crazy results that this is why it's important to say, hey, yeah, we didn't play our best, but we not only did we not lose, which a lot of good teams have lost when they haven't played very well, but it wasn't even a close game. So, so there is a lot of positive things. But yes, there's no question that when you take a look at the schedule that the Patriots' run, this 6-0 run, by 24.6 points per game, the winning margin, have come against either bad teams or good teams that have been struggling. either with injuries. So this is now, I'm not saying the Bills haven't like struggled a little bit lately. They're not on top of their game, that's for sure. But they're still the Bills. They're healthy. They want this bad. They're not like looking ahead. There's nothing for the Buffalo. They're well rested. There's nothing for the Buffalo Bills to have an excuse. So, we weren't focused against the Jags. Those things happen. They are going to be focused. This is one of those games where if the Patriots win, no matter how they win, they'll be able to prove to themselves, or at least to the fans, that, you know what? We have a true Super Bowl contender.
Yeah, that's really the point of this game, because you look at, like you said, I think that there's one really legitimate win in this 6-game win streak, and that was out in LA against the Chargers. The Chargers had their full contingent on the road, West Coast trip, the whole 9 yards in terms of travel and being on the road and things like that. And the Patriots beat and really decide, even though the score wasn't completely lopsided, the Patriots were clearly the better team on that day, and they beat the Chargers, and that was their quality win of the season so far. But nobody is going to throw a parade for them beating the Titans without Derrick Henry, Julio Jones, A.J. Brown, 3 of their starting linebackers, and their backup running back, right? They're on their practice squad. Dante Foreman's a guy they just signed off the street last week, and he rushes for over 100 yards against the Patriots. So that no one's going to start the parade floats for that. Now, if they beat Buffalo in Buffalo, then we can start talking about a real Super Bowl contender in New England. But we still got to, we're a ways away from them actually doing that. And that's a whole totally different ball game. And still the Bills, the Patriots, he's not coming back, so it doesn't matter. But Tre'Davious White tears his ACL against New Orleans. So the Patriots catch a little bit of another break there with one of the Buffalo's best players going down. So
like you said, he's not coming back.
Right.
So this is the Bills team now. This is it. So
everything is lining up in a positive direction for the Patriots, who, knock on wood, are relatively healthy. The only player that's not coming back this year is James White. Everybody else for the Pats is healthy and playing. All these other teams in the AFC, Tennessee, Buffalo loses Trey White. There's a lot of other injuries throughout the rest of the conference. And we've been saying this for weeks. It feels like there's an opportunity there for this Patriots team. If Mac Jones can really grow up before our eyes, even more so than what he already has, then this Patriots team has the talent in all 3 phases to compete in the AFC.
Yeah. And the more this goes on, too, seeing other teams, even in the NFC, not play their best, like the Rams.
Right.
I mean, the Saints are now done, it seems like. So there's even warts with some of the better teams in the NFC, when just about 3 or 4 weeks ago, it seemed like there were dominant teams in the NFC, and whoever was going to represent them in the Super Bowl was clearly going to be the easy favorite, and the team that was going to be the clear victor. But I don't know if the Patriots necessarily need to win this game to prove that they're a Super Bowl contender. As long as they go out and play a good football game against a very good team on the road, that's all I care about if I'm a fan thinking about the big picture. Because all of this, I still don't believe in the Chiefs yet. I still think there's something that's just not quite right there with the Chiefs yet. And forget Tennessee, they're now done. The Colts, who the Patriots will now play after the bye, they are interesting because they could be dangerous, no question, but they're also not, it's not like a team where you would go, oh, the Patriots can't beat the Colts in the playoffs. I mean, that's not the case. So, and any team in the AFC North is vulnerable. I mean, you got the Baltimore Ravens winning a game where their quarterback throws 4 interceptions. So this is actually setting up very nicely for the Patriots. If I was actually looking and forecasting who I believe will represent the AFC today in the Super Bowl, Patriots have to be in the top 3.
Yeah. It's fascinating how much this has turned around. 2-4 start. Now we're talking about this. Honestly, like, the Patriots could be in the Super Bowl or Super Bowl contenders in the AFC. I think if you look at, and we'll find this out quickly with Buffalo, are they blown off the field? Right? Is the talent discrepancy and the talent gap just so significant with the Bills that they are just overwhelmed by it.
No.
I don't think it is either,
No.
but Buffalo has that kind of roster
Sure.
where anybody could be overwhelmed by
and you
the
don't know the
talent,
matchup
right?
either. It's the first time that
Right.
these groups of guys will go up against each other, so
Right.
maybe it's a bad
Right.
matchup. You don't know.
And then with Indianapolis after the bye week, that game, although I always like Bill Belichick in a playoff game and think they'll play them hard if they do meet in the playoffs, from a stylistic perspective, the way the Colts offense is built scares me, because that offense, that system, is the same system the Eagles ran in 2017 in the Super Bowl against the Patriots. Schematically, it does a lot of things that give the Patriots a lot of problems. There's a lot of motion. The quarterback is more of a manager of the offense or a sidecar of the offense than actually the focal point of the offense. And there's a lot of guys that they run the ball well. They can distribute the ball well. They mess with your keys defensively in terms of RPOs and play actions and things like that. And those types of schemes where there's a lot of just guys in space and foot races, right? And, got those big Patriot linebackers going across the field with backs and tight ends and slot receivers, and those schemes have given the Patriots problems in the past. And Frank Reich and Doug Peterson's offense, obviously, in that Super Bowl, hung 41 points on Bill Belichick's defense. So
Sure.
that schematic, that type of offense, I think when you're the Patriots, if you're an under center, now Tennessee just did what they did, so I guess it's not foolproof, but for the most part, when you are a under center team that runs the football, Belichick will play you out of base defense and they'll figure it out, right? If you're a spread team like Buffalo that floods the field with receivers and tries to spread you out and attack deep, then he'll play dime the entire game and figure it out. But when they're this team that everybody's a threat and there's not really one thing that you're trying to shut down, those are the types of offenses that give the Patriots problems, is the teams that are balanced, not just run pass balance, but also balanced in terms of where they can attack you on the field. If you're just a down the field passing game like Buffalo, Belichick will play two deep safeties, he'll keep things in front of him, and he'll make you dink and dunk your way down the field and bank on the fact that a quarterback like Josh Allen isn't efficient enough to play that style of game. And you'll get some turnovers or some negative plays or make some key third down stops and get off the field. But those teams that have given the Patriots problems in the past, some sort of mobility from the quarterback position is always important. And although Carson Wentz is not Lamar Jackson, he can run around a little bit and is a factor with his legs just a bit. And then you also have the fact that, there's a lot of schemes in that offense, RPO designs in particular, that give the Patriots problems for whatever reason, probably because they have a very heavy emphasis on stopping the run from their linebackers. Those linebackers, Bentley and Hightower, Van Noy, they're very heavily responsible for things in the fits in the run game. So when you start giving them conflicts of run pass conflict, it makes it really difficult for them to defend. They kind of get stuck in no man's land. They're not really defending the run and they're not really defending the pass. And that's when you can kind of pick apart this Patriots defense. So I think this Buffalo matchup, the Patriots, typically when you're a one-trick pony like Buffalo is, where you can only pass the ball, they'll find a way to stop your passing game. And every single time Matt Breida or Devin Singletary takes a handoff, Bill Belichick's going to clap his hands on the sideline and say, keep doing it. If you want to run the ball, keep running the football. We don't care if you run the ball for 250 yards. We're going to hold you to 13 points, and we're going to win the game by 3 touchdowns. Like they did.
What happened in the games last year that you can recall that?
So the first game in Buffalo, the Patriots played them tight. They got them down to, I want to say they were inside the 35, 30-yard line, and Cam Newton fumbled on the Patriots' final possession of the game, trying to go in for the go-ahead score. They had a chance to go ahead late in the fourth quarter in that first game, and Newton fumbled the game away, and that was all she wrote. The second game, the Patriots were... if they lost and didn't get a ton of help, like there was no way they were going to make the playoffs at that point. They were pretty much out of it. And Buffalo came up here in Foxborough and absolutely blew the doors off the Patriots. They beat the Patriots senseless. I want to say it was a 2 or 3 touchdown game. Stephon Diggs had 3 touchdowns. it was not a pretty game. But the first game was much better. Now, I don't know how much you take away from that because both teams, specifically, obviously the Patriots, personnel wise, are so different than they were last year that it's tough to say, oh, Belichick's going to do this schematically against Josh Allen from that game. Maybe you could go back to like the 19 and 18, 19 game really, because Allen and his rookie year wasn't really anything, but maybe 19. You can look at that game a little bit more from a stylistic perspective to see what exactly the Patriots did against Josh Allen to slow him down. But he was such a younger quarterback back then, and he's developed so much since then that I don't know how much stock the past games really play into this, other than just knowing from a stylistic schematic standpoint what these teams like to run and what Sean McDermott and his staff is all about.
Well, in the first matchup, the close game, and I think this is important because this is still early in the season. This is still, everybody's trying to fight for, especially even the Patriots. They were desperate. They were 2-4 at the time.
Right.
And they hold Josh Allen to 11 of 18 for 154 yards and an interception.
Yeah.
So that right there, and again, you're talking about a Buffalo team that went on and they had a pretty hot season. This week 16 one, all right, the Patriots season's over. This is not a measuring stick game, and all of a sudden, Josh Allen goes for 320 and 4 touchdowns.
Right.
And on the road, which by the way, the Bills have had more success over the years in Foxborough than they've had in Buffalo. In Buffalo, the Patriots had their 8-game winning streak in the series snapped last year.
Yeah.
And they've covered 7 of 9 in Buffalo. So whatever the reason is, the Patriots actually play pretty well in Buffalo as opposed to the other being at home. So I look at this one definitely as I'm looking at this more like the early season matchup than I just forget the week 16 one. That means nothing to me. So that says something. That says, hey, you hold Josh Allen to no touchdowns, less than 200-yard passing. They feel like they've figured something out that I'm sure they're going to use in the game on Monday night.
Yeah, I think with what Belichick has done in the past against Allen now, last year the Patriots were still very man coverage heavy, and they still played a decent amount of man-to-man in both of those matchups. From what we have seen this year of Buffalo, and I would say last year to a degree too, because remember, Allen goes off for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns, 3 TDs to Diggs. A couple of those were on J.C. Jackson in man coverage. And I think if you look at this Bills team, you cannot play man coverage against these guys because they just have too many weapons. You have Diggs, obviously, but you also have Manny Sanders. You have Cole Beasley. You have Dawson Knox at the tight end position, who's tough to cover in man-to-man. And I think in a lot of ways, teams like the Jaguars and the Colts defensively gave the Patriots a blueprint of how to play zone coverage against Buffalo and shut Allen down with 2 high shells, right? So you try to get him to pick you apart underneath. And essentially, he's this big cannon arm downfield type of passer, and he wants to air it out, right? They want to push the football down the field. And I think in a lot of ways, the Jaguars and the Colts basically turned him into Tom Brady and said, you're going to have to stand in the pocket and you're going to have to beat us going over the middle of the field with throwing with timing, anticipation, pinpoint ball placement and accuracy, and beat us like a precision quarterback, like an efficient quarterback.
Which is not his game.
We were not going to give you the big plays. And that is not his game, and that was how they were able to get him off his spot and confuse him and rattle him a little bit. So if I'm the Patriots, I look at that game plan, and I look at what they did in a similar fashion to Justin Herbert, who I think is a similar style of quarterback in a lot of ways to Josh Allen. And it was, again, a lot of zone coverage in the back end, right? You start in a 2 high shell, then you rotate 1 safety down, and now it's a 1 high after the snap, and now he's got to read it out and figure it out, and you're dropping all those guys deep in the back end to make sure you're taking away the big plays. And He's got to read out these coverages, and Justin Herbert had a lot of difficulty with it. And you start to get the quarterback to hold the football in the pocket, and then you can start winning in the pass rush, right? If your quarterback's holding it for 2.6, 2.7 seconds, now here comes Matt Judon and Christian Barmore and the Patriots pass rush, and then you marry it together and you have a very effective game plan against Allen. So to me, that's where it starts, is forget about man coverage this week. The Patriots are probably going to be 80-85% zone, I would say, because there's no way that they're going to think that they have the horses in the secondary to match up with Buffalo. You know, in the past, you have Gilmore out there, right? And you're able to match up Diggs on Gilmore on Diggs, and you're able to maybe feel good about that matchup. Now, J.C. Jackson, Jalen Mills, Miles Bryant, that's your cornerback group going up against Diggs, Beasley, and Sanders. That's a recipe for a disaster. And you also add into that Allen can run.
Yes.
So if you're playing man coverage and everybody's got their back to their quarterback, running around with routes down the field, now here comes Allen taking off, right? So are you going to designate a spy to him, because that pulls another defender out of coverage, and now you're playing coverage with 5 or 6 guys instead of 7, and there's all sorts of different issues and conflicts that puts you in. So I'm expecting a ton of zone. I'm expecting the Patriots to try to come after this Buffalo offensive line, which has had some issues this year and hasn't been particularly great in pass protection. And I think there is a formula there for this Patriots defense, because the Bills, maybe the Titans put something on tape last week that you can run on this Patriots defense. Cleveland wasn't able to do it, so I'm not 100% sure how much that is really true, and maybe one game admiration there with the Titans. But regardless, if you have to find a weakness in the Patriots defense, it's definitely been the run defense this year. The pass defense has been pretty solid for most of the season. So
but the Bills can't take advantage of that.
The Bills can't take advantage. The Bills don't want to take advantage.
Exactly. And that's me, if they're not going to me, if they can't win the Super Bowl this year, or maybe they can't even get to the Super Bowl this year, if they disappoint this year, 1 and out or something like that in the postseason, I don't care what you say about Brian Daboll or this, the way that this offense has been constructed over the last several years, but you have to do something different. And I already think they should be doing something different, but they're not. They're going to think that, okay, this has been working, we're going to keep doing it. I can't see it happening. I have never seen a Super Bowl champion. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm missing someone. I'm not saying that you need to have a running football team. A lot more passing offenses, they're winning the day now as far as Super Bowl champions. But you have to have a semblance of a little bit of balance in the running game. I've never seen a team. I'm trying to remember, when was the last time a team has been successful winning a Super Bowl championship when they hardly ever care about running the football?
Right. I mean, at some point in time, most Super Bowl champions do run it. I guess Kansas City a couple years ago would maybe be an example of a team.
But at least they had a little bit of balance that you were looking for. I agree what you're saying, but even more so last year, I think that they were a little bit more pass happy, and it cost them because of the running back situation. But even 2 years ago, they had a little bit of a running game that looked a lot better than what the Bills are giving you.
Yeah, and if you look at with Buffalo, they don't want to run.
No.
They don't want to run the ball. They want to throw the football. And you look at things like early down pass rate, right? First and second down pass rate. The Bills are so far and away number 1 in percentage of passing plays on first and second down. If you look at the chart, it's like Kansas City's number 2, right? But there's a sizable gap between Kansas City. Kansas City's around 65%. Buffalo's up around 80% pass on first and second down. They want to air the football out. They want to throw it. They want to use short passes, in some sort of semblance of a quick passing game in place of a running game. And they feel, as a lot of coaches nowadays do, that the run game is a crutch, a back burner, or whatever you want to call it, right? Secondary to the pass game. And every single run is taking away from the pass game. And I think the Patriots have really, in so many ways, represented not only the other side, but also how you can marry it all up together, right? And the Patriots have been so good off of play action this year as well. And I know all the nerds and all the analytics buffs are going to come after me and say, well, you don't have to be a good running team to be able to run play action effectively. And that's not true. That the numbers don't bear that out. The numbers might not bear that out for reasons and factors that are secondary to what's actually going on, right? Sometimes the numbers, you got to really get into the minutia and the details of the numbers to understand why exactly this is happening. The guys on the field that play the games, that play the defensive snaps, are saying that if we're not thinking in the back of our head that I have to come up and tackle the back because their running game is so good that I'm a deep safety, but I might need to get involved in stopping the run, that it's much easier to stop play action if you don't have to worry about the running game. So I know the numbers don't back it up, but I'm going to listen a little bit to the guys that actually play the games, right? And if they're saying that things like body blows and things like play action and run game sequencing matter, then I think they probably matter just a little bit.
Look, it can happen. The Bills could go on and win the Super Bowl, and all of a sudden everybody's going to go, wait a second, we don't have to run the football.
Right.
Let's just, everybody, where 80% of the teams out there will now just forget and abandon the running game. But until that happens, I am not going to believe that it's capable or even going to be something consistently that a championship ball club is going to be able to accomplish. It just doesn't make any sense. It's just it's almost like, you know how people always talk about our teams that want to run the football, and they'll say, yeah, they're really good at running the football and they don't care that it. We're just going to line it up and we're going to go mano a mano and we're going to run it down your throat. We've heard that for years. The Bills are basically saying the same thing, but in the passing game. We know that we're going to throw the ball. We don't care. We're just going to keep throwing it. And I'm sorry, but I've just never, it just doesn't, it's just so hard to accomplish that when you have, it's interesting. Singletary averages, I think, something like 4.7 yards a carry.
Right.
Brieda in limited touches, 5.2 yards a carry. The worst is Moss at 3.7, which isn't 3.0 or 3.1. So the average is actually pretty decent. So I just don't understand why they don't do it a little bit more. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And I think the offensive line issue also has a lot to do with that.
Yeah, I think the answer to why they don't do it more is because they would tell you that they're gaining those yards on the ground because teams are playing a man short in the box. They're playing too high coverage shells to worry about the passing game, and it's making it easier to run the football. But at the same time, I just look at the Patriots and Bill Belichick going into this game knowing if we stop the Bills' passing attack, they are not going to run the football enough to beat us on the ground. If we really shut down Josh Allen, and I honestly think that they felt the same way about the Charger game last month, where they said they gave up, I think, 175 rushing yards to the Chargers in that game. Now, it was one big run, was 75-yard big run, but
and by the way, that's now two big runs in the last, 4 games.
Right. They've given up some chunks against the Chargers. They gave up 2 or 3 big chunk runs against Los Angeles, but it didn't matter because they did such a good job of stopping Justin Herbert that the Chargers continued to call passing plays time and time and time again, and the Patriots continued to shut down the passing plays time and time again, and they never changed their philosophy. They never ran the football. And I think that that's going to be exactly how Bill Belichick's going to feel about this game. If I take away Josh Allen in the passing game, they will not run for 200 yards against me because they won't hand it off 35 times to run for 200. They'll hand it off 20, 25 times. They'll probably gain 5 yards per carry, but I don't care because they're not going to stick with it. And we'll see. Look, if Brian Daboll, he was a really good offensive mind. He's a very brilliant offensive coordinator. I think he schemes up a good game and runs good game plans and has some good play calls as well in game. And he's going to be a head coach someday. in the NFL. There's no doubt about that. But if he truly wants to put on his resume a head coach type of win or a head coach type of season that gets him over that hump and gets him that job, doing exactly what Bill Belichick doesn't expect him to do, and actually going away from how the Bills have been so successful and being a game plan offense and doing something a little bit different outside the box for them and taking advantage of this Patriots run defense, that to me would say a lot more about Brian Daboll than if the Bills just out athlete the Patriots and somehow throw for 350 yards against New England on Monday night. If he can actually come up with a game plan where they come up with a run game plan that is completely different than what the Patriots are expecting, I will actually tip my cap to Daboll and say, good, job well done to you, sir.
And that's what you want to see if you're almost like if you're a fan of the game, because like you said, especially if you're a fan of the Bills, but it would be like, wow, I have a coach that actually has some creativity. So, somebody that is just not going to be so egotistical that, hey, what I do is going to work and you're going to have to stop me. And that's it. To me, it's just, we see too many of those coaches and not enough of the coaches like the Bill Belichicks and the Josh McDaniels that can coach and scheme game to game, depending on who their opponent is.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the difference between a lot of these hot new age, in vogue coaches is a lot of these guys like Daboll, like out in Charger land with Brandon Staley. Those guys, they want to throw the football. Sean McVay, same way. They throw the football a ton in neutral situations, right? When the game isn't out of hand late and they're running the football to run out the clock. When you look at one score games and neutral situations, those teams run the ball more than anybody else. They run the ball a ton or pass the ball, excuse me. And those guys do what they do. And to some degree, when you have the talent and when you have the players and you have the execution, you can go out there and you can do what you do and beat anybody on any given Sunday. And that's what they're banking on. But you're right. There aren't a ton of young coaches that are taking the Belichick approach where they're saying, this is what the Patriots are bad at. This is what we're going to do this week to exploit it. Now, it's not, as Belichick says, it's amplifying your strengths and attacking weaknesses. So it's not completely going away from your strengths. But if 1 week it favors a little bit more run-heavy plan, then you run the football. If it favors passing the ball, you pass the football. But these coaches are in their spreadsheets. Right, they really are. They're in their spreadsheets, and they see that efficiency-wise, throwing the ball is the way to go. And if we throw the ball, this is what happens. And if we create explosive plays in the passing game, we score more touchdowns. It's like, well, duh. Yeah. But you have to figure out different ways to let the defense give that to you. Just imagine it's not going to just be handed to you every single week.
Just imagine if you turn the game on Monday night and the Bills go out on their first offensive series, and they have 3 tight ends, a fullback, and a running back. How would that not be like, that is totally awesome? They practice. Yeah. And not that you have to do that because you can't for 1 week. You haven't done it all year. You're not going to be able to put 50% of your plays, and it's just not possible because you're probably not going to do it very well.
Right.
So I get that. But to not be able to sprinkle in about, can you do 25%? Can you just do a little bit where, hey, you know what? It's the first series. What are they doing? Give them something to think about, or wait until the second half maybe when they can't readjust and all of a sudden. So these are things that not enough coaches do. And I think that's why Daboll to me is very similar to, who's the offensive coordinator with the Ravens again?
All right. Well, it's
the San Francisco dude.
Yeah, Greg Roman.
Yes.
Greg Roman.
So same situation.
There we go.
I know how to do this with Colin Kaepernick, with Lamar Jackson, but this guy, I'm sorry, but he should have been let go last year. You're not going. They think it's because we don't have enough wide receivers, so we just got to give Lamar more wide receivers. How
Right.
blind can you be? That's not Lamar Jackson. He's never going to be that type of quarterback. You have to be able to come up with something different offensively. Greg Roman can't. He's just not that good of a coach. He's a one-trick pony. And that's why now Daboll, whether or not he could be a head coach, to me is different than whether or not he's an offensive whiz guy. Or there's a lot, as you know, to being a really good head coach as opposed to being a really successful offensive coordinator. And I agree with you. I think Daboll has what it takes to be more of a manager of men as opposed to just some sort of a whiz kid calling plays. But that's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see one of these teams, but I just don't think we're going to see it on Monday night. That's for sure. It's going to be the same old, and I think that's going to work out well for the Patriots.
Yeah, and it's going to be really fascinating too, because although Josh Allen is obviously in year 4 or 5 at this point and is in a much different place in his career than Mac Jones, I guarantee you, looking at this Buffalo pass defense and how good they are getting after the quarterback and turning the ball over as a pass defense, Mac Jones will be a sidecar in this game. Mac Jones, they're going to try to run the football 40 times. They're going to put play action. They're going to put screens. They're going to put short, quick passes to get the ball out of Mac's hands. And he is not going to stand there in the pocket and try to survey the field and let that pass rush get after him and let McDermott spin the dial on him and confuse him in the back end, because that is going to create chaos for the Patriots offense. And Josh McDaniels will know that. So even though there has been games this year, I would say the Tennessee game, they let Mac open it up a little bit more and he threw for 310. There has been games where they've been able to do that. This to me is a game where Mac will be very heavily managed, because even without Tre'Davious White, that Bills defense, especially against the pass, is arguably the best pass defense in the entire NFL. And it's not just that they don't give up a ton of yards. It's also that they turn you over and they sack the quarterback, and they can really influence negative plays in so many different ways. So you'll see the yin and the yang here, right? The weight of the world is going to be on Josh Allen's shoulders on Monday night to pull off this game and this win for Buffalo. The Patriots are going to win this game with all 53 guys. Right? They're going to try to win this game with Mac Jones being an afterthought, with him being a footnote in our final game write-ups and recaps. When I write my 10 things, they're going to want Mac Jones to be number 10, not number 1. Right?
Like 170 yards, one touchdown, no picks, something like that.
Yeah. Right. And it's going to be a lot of smoke and mirrors. It's going to be a lot of play action. It's going to be a lot of screens. They'll probably move the pocket a little bit to try to get him away from that pass rush when they do throw the football. And they are going to do all the little bells and whistles that they possibly can to hide him. And I don't mean that in a way that Mac needs to be hidden at this point, but it's just the best way to win the football game. And I think a lot of people come away from those types of game plans and they say, oh, well, the Patriots won, but Mac wasn't really, they won in spite of Mac Jones and, this, that, the other thing. It's, well, that's just smart coaching, because you're not going to throw your rookie quarterback on the road in prime time against a division rival in the number 1 defense in the league. You're not going to throw him to the dogs, right? That would be dumb. Just to prove a point, you're going to have him go out there and throw the ball 40 times. I mean, that's just stubborn.
Yeah, I don't know if you follow college much, but that is exactly what was happening with Michigan this year. So they decided smartly for the first time, which is why, since I'm a Michigan fan, which is why I knew this was a different team, because Jim Harbaugh said, we're going to go back to the basics. We're going to run the football. We're going to get good at running the football. That's what beats Ohio State. But it's also what I've done best in my coaching days, is run the football. And so early on in the season, they just kept running the football. And Cade McNamara, the criticism was, oh, he's no good. You're not allowing him to throw the football because he's no good. So you just keep running the ball. It's not because Cade McNamara is not any good, but what you do best is run the football. So that's what we're going to continue to do. That's good coaching. And that's exactly why the Patriots aren't going to let Mac Jones hang out to dry on Monday night.
Right. So they're going to try to play smart, turnover-free football on offense. When they do go to the passing game, they'll try to be efficient through the air, right? So if he throws the ball 20 times, they'll try to make him 15 for 20 for 8 yards per attempt or something like that, right? And have an efficient passing day. But the run game will win it. Special teams, defense, they'll win it with all 3 phases. And Buffalo tries to win on defense too. I'm not saying that they don't have a good defense, but when this game comes down to it, And if it's close late or when it's decided early, it's going to be decided by Josh Allen. If Josh Allen plays well, the Bills are going to win. If he doesn't play well, the Patriots are probably going to win. And it's really that simple. And that's the difference between the Patriots and the Bills coaching staff right now, is the Bills are willing to let it ride on Josh Allen. The Patriots are saying, we have a whole team here, right? We got a whole team. We got running backs. We got an offensive line. We got special teams that can win field position. Why are we just making Mac win every game for us? That's ridiculous. So it's really a Styles wins fights type of battle. It's totally different. And however the game script goes is going to really decide. If this is a shootout, I don't like the Patriots' chances, right? I don't like the Patriots' chances going toe-to-toe in a shootout. But if they can grind this game out, then I think that the Patriots could win this one.
Yeah, and even though White's out, you have probably the best safety tandem in football, in Micah Hyde and Poyer.
They're fantastic.
Those guys know each other like the back of their hands. They've been together now for a few years, so they're at the elite level combined, the two of those guys. And then Teron Johnson has had a very good season.
Yeah,
so
good nickel.
Here's a guy that they pick up, not a high draft pick. And so even though White will be missed, no question, because now Teron Johnson's going to be the number one guy, which means the number two guy. I don't know who that's going to be. I don't know if that's going to be Levi Wallace. I don't know that's going to be where they might be more susceptible. But I don't see the Patriots as the type of team that will be able to take advantage of that. So it's going to be more, like you said, it's going to be more of, why should we put Mac Jones in a position to allow this really good Buffalo defense with McDermott? You respect the guy. This is going to be one of the best defensive coordinators Mac Jones is going to go up against. There's always that other team too. And a lot of times when you're Bill Belichick and a Bill Belichick coach staff, you already have an edge when you step on the field by a wide margin. That's not the case with McDermott on the defensive side of the ball against a rookie quarterback this week. So why would you put your rookie quarterback in that situation? This just doesn't make any sense for you to do that. So they're not going to do it. And what also, when you mentioned it, what I think is going to be very interesting and maybe even the deciding factor of the game is special teams. Because both kickers are having good seasons, and both teams have two of the best kick returners in the game. You have Gunner for the Patriots, you have Isaiah McKenzie for the Bills.
Yeah, and special teams has been huge for the Patriots in this run. Last week, average starting field position for the Patriots was the 41-yard line. It was the 23-yard line for the Tennessee Titans. So the Titans had to drive the field a ton against this Patriots defense. The Pats got a ton of short fields. It's been really, really key to a lot of the things that they have done. And I think when you talk about, I think Trey White's a great player. I think he's one of the best corners in the league. But when you talk about the lifeblood of that Bills defense, it's Hyde and Poyer. Those two guys at the safety position, I've been watching them for a while now because they've been in Buffalo for a couple years now, and they are as good as it gets. They're interchangeable. They can both play deep. They can both play lower and closer to the line of scrimmage. If you're the Patriots trying to run the football, I am sure they're going to put one of those guys in the box, and they're going to have him fly up the field and run blitz and try to shoot gaps and blow up running plays. And that's going to be a problem because when you start to think about hat on hat, right, you have 6 guys to block 8, and you have the safeties screaming up and jumping into gaps. It's difficult to account for the safeties in the run fits from an offensive perspective. So Hyde and Poyer, to me, the way that they're interchangeable, the way that they can spin it in coverage, but then also the way that they can attack the line of scrimmage against the run, that has been the core identity of this Bills defense for a couple years now. Trey White's a fantastic player, and he's somebody that deserves all the accolades that he gets. But I really feel like schematically, those two safeties are the engine of the defense, and those two guys are still there. And the Patriots, they're going to want to run the football, and they're going to want to throw it to the middle of the field, and that's exactly where Hyde and Poyer are going to live. So it's going to be really interesting to see that matchup because, like I said, run blitzes from that safety level is something to look for because the Patriots are going to have to account for that somehow, and it's going to come from Buffalo, I'm sure of it.
Do we have a weather forecast yet?
It's early weather forecast said that it might snow.
Oh, that would be nice.
So
that favors the Patriots.
Yeah, I think it. Yeah, I mean, look, Buffalo is a dome team that plays in Western New York, right, or upstate New York, which is interesting. So yeah, I do think it does favor the Pats a little bit if it's a crappy weather night.
Let's see. It
Then I would
says a
obviously
few flurries or snow showers possible. The winds being up is also nice. 15 to 25-mile-an-hour winds. So that's good. Sometimes that's even better than the snow flurries. That's why I felt as a Michigan fan, once it started snowing in the game on Saturday, I was like, yeah, I feel good already because Michigan's a running team, Ohio State's a passing team. So it just happens. Right. It's the great equalizer.
Yep. Some good weather luck. Brian Dable outsmarts himself or gets too cute by throwing the ball all game long, and the Patriots might be in good shape in this game. It's really a fascinating coaching matchup because it's two totally different philosophies, right? They want to win football games in such different ways. It's going to be really interesting to see which one wins out.
And look, again, they're going to play again in a few weeks, so you might get the split. It makes more sense that you would think you'll get the split, but still. The Bills are a game back, the Patriots, so you don't want to be chasing New England if you're the Bills because chances are you go down 2 games knowing that the Patriots have Jacksonville and Miami to end the season. And I don't think the Bills catch the Patriots. I think the Patriots win this game on Monday night. I think they win the division.
Yeah, I saw a stat from Football Outsiders that runs all those simulations and predictive type of things. And I guess the Patriots win the division 68% of the time if they win the game on Monday night.
Yeah.
So they have a good chance because they'll have the head-to-head at that point. They have the conference record over Buffalo, which is another kind of tiebreaker. And so if they beat Miami in week 18, and they also have the division record over Buffalo as well. So with only 1 loss in the division. So, they'll be able to squeak it out if they're able to win this game on Monday night. But then the whole thing flips if they lose.
Yeah.
Then they go, then it plummets if they lose.
Yes, because of the fact that the Bills, besides their matchup, because the Bills got to play Tampa Bay next week. So they go right from a home game against the Patriots to the Super Bowl champs on the road.
Yeah.
So, but after that, 3 of their last 4 matchups are against losing teams, with the exception of the Patriot game.
Yeah, they have an easier end to the schedule, I would say. I mean, Miami and Jacksonville is easy, but the Patriots have that Colts game throw in there. So I guess it's maybe about even when you really they have the head-to-head. Tampa Bay and Indianapolis are both good teams, so it's about even down the stretch. But that Tampa Bay game, we talk about missing Tre'Davious White. That's a game where they might actually feel Tre'Davious White's absence a little bit more. This New England game, so they don't have Tre'Davious White to cover Nelson Aguilar. Like I think they'll survive, right? But if they don't have Tre'Davious White to cover Mike Evans, that's a different ball game with Tampa Bay.
And I think we talked a little bit about this too a month ago. I think it was, and now I think I don't know how about those Miami fans or those Brian Flores detractors feel now. I mean, these idiots who were thinking that Brian Flores was, maybe he's going to get fired now. Just come on. I mean, Brian Flores has done such a great job in Miami with what little he has. He doesn't have. Do you look at the roster? They don't have a good roster, and yet he's still able to get this team when they basically have 1 win. They could tank it. They could just play out the season, and they're actually probably still thinking in their minds they can make the playoffs now.
Yeah. Miami is an interesting team, and the Patriots down in Miami, it's a house of horrors. Hard Rock Stadium is not a place that the Patriots have played well. They've had a lot of notable losses, the Miami Miracle game and some bad losses down there. They've struggled specifically late in the season in Miami because of the weather change, right? Because you go from 30 degrees in Massachusetts to 80 degrees in Miami. And that weather shift is often a big problem for the Patriots as well. I remember in the Miami Miracle game, the Patriots blew Miami out in the first half. They had Miami on the ropes. They were up by two or three scores after halftime. And then the Pats just completely let go of the rope. Their second half was a completely different script. And maybe, the heat and the weather, it might have wore them down a little bit. So late December, January games for the Patriots down in Miami. In general, the Patriots are about a 500 team in Miami in the Belichick era, no matter when they play them. But specifically late in the year in December and January, the record goes even below 500, and they're not a very good team. So that every Patriots fan will not take anything for granted in that Week 18 game against Miami. I don't care if Miami is out of playoff contention, eliminated, all that kind of stuff. They'll be playing spoiler with the Patriots probably going for the division or the number one seed or something like that in Week 18. And that's a house of horrors for Bill Belichick. They've had some really, really bad losses.
Yeah, I think looking at that, the Bills have the edge because they've been able to play Miami. Well, they're done with Miami, but they got the Jets, and the Jets, they have no problems usually with them.
Right.
Like you said, the Patriots have had problems with Miami, so maybe that's a little bit of an edge there for the Bills when you're talking about divisional matchups later on in the season. Quick question. What's up with the Karras plays Onwenu doesn't? What's that about?
Well, it's a good question, and I'm actually speaking to Ted Karras this week in an interview, so that'll be good. And I think the biggest
that'll be on Press Pass or CLNS Media.
On clnsmedia.com, it'll be a written feature. I think the thing that's really interesting about that switch is I don't think it's solely about who the better player is, right? I think anybody could watch the two guys play and see that Mike Onwenu is a more talented offensive lineman than Ted Karras. But because Ted Karras brings a veteran savvy to the position, I think that has really steadied a lot of the other parts of the offensive line. And the Patriots have mentally been sharper since Ted Karras has been in the lineup. Isaiah Wynn at left tackle has played better with Karras next to him versus Onwenu next to him. And in a lot of ways, the one comparison I can think of right now at the top of my head is like when a pitcher likes a certain catcher, right? And he only will throw to that catcher. I think with Ted Karras, it makes Wynn more comfortable having a veteran guy next to him that has a really high football IQ and knows what he's doing. Maybe it's negligible in terms of production and stuff like that. And one catcher hits the same average as the other catcher, and one's as good as defensive guy as the other. But if it makes him
feel better, then
right. But it's between the ears. It's a mental thing. And the Patriots, Ted Karras has played center a lot in his career. He played center for the Patriots in 2019, and then he played center for the Dolphins in 2020 as a starting center. So he's essentially a second center on the interior that can point out blitzes, that can point out stunts, that can point out mic points and different sort of looks that the defense is throwing you. So when you have a rookie quarterback, and now you have two guys in David Andrews and Ted Karras that have a ton of experience on not just in the NFL, but specifically in the Patriots system, I think it helps out Mac Jones a lot to have two veterans to run everything through before he makes the call at the line of scrimmage.
So do you have a feeling as far as the game?
It's a tough one to predict because
it is. You just don't know what you're going to get, in all honesty.
The fan in me wants to sit here and say the Patriots are for real, and this is all for real, and Mac is ready for it, a primetime win on the road against a good divisional team and all that kind of stuff. But is there a chance that they fall back down to earth in this game and Buffalo outclasses them a little bit and maybe is a little bit ahead of them in terms of the development of the quarterback? And so, yeah, it's definitely possible that the Patriots are a good team that beat up on some bad teams, but aren't a great Super Bowl caliber team just yet. And I think we'll find that out on Monday night because, like you said, even if they lose a close game against Buffalo, that still tells us a lot about the character of the team, right? Yes. So I lean towards Buffalo winning in a close game. I feel like Patriots will be representative. The Patriots will compete. I don't think Mac Jones is going to throw 3 interceptions and completely fall on his face or anything like that. But I lean towards the experience and kind of the team that's already arrived, so to speak, versus the team that's still trying to figure out a lot of things.
Although, if we were going to point out just one team on the schedule that could give Mac Jones his really bad game, this would be
Yeah.
it. So,
Yeah,
which is
New
also
Orleans,
why, as we said, you don't want to put him in that spot. So
right. So far, New Orleans is his worst statistical game. He threw 3 interceptions in that game, and
that's
last
Dennis
week
Allen, and that was when the Saints were going well early in the season.
Right. Right. Last week was not perfect by any means either, even though the stats look good. He didn't play a perfect game by any means. So I would say he didn't really play perfectly against Atlanta either. There was a lot of mistakes in Atlanta too, but the Falcons are just so poor that that it didn't matter.
Yeah.
So we'll see if Matt can be turnover free and make the plays make the layups, right? Make the throws that are presented to him by the scheme, by McDaniels, by the game plan. Then that's all the Patriots can really ask for.
All right, and then the bye is after that. So
yes, nice break.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we'll take a break and be back when we preview the Colts and the Saturday night game. Correct?
Yeah. Correct. Yes, Saturday night prime time on NFL Network. There's the tease for you, NFL Network.
Is that one home or away?
No, that's in Indianapolis.
So back-to-back prime time away games for the Patriots.
Yeah, the Patriots are for real. So now we got, back on prime time, back to being flexed, all that kind of stuff. So this Titans game didn't get flexed because the Titans were a shell of themselves, and it wasn't worth it. But this Colts game was flexed into that Saturday window. I believe the Buffalo game the day after Christmas is locked in as a 1:00 game in Foxborough. I don't think you can flex. They have the option to flex that.
The networks they're not going to give those away too easily.
Right. So that week 16 game against Buffalo is a regular 1:00. They finished with 3 1:00 at the end of the season, but two more prime times.
Tennessee will have their schedule is pretty easy. Jacksonville, Pittsburgh, San Francisco, Miami, Houston. That could be their saving grace. Does Tennessee, before I let you go, do they make the playoffs?
Yeah, I think they'll make the playoffs. Look, they did a lot of good things.
They turned the ball over, which really decided the football game.
Yeah, I mean, 2 games in a row, turnovers have it's funny because Bill Belichick said we can't count on them turning the ball over 5 times again, and they turned it over 4 times against the Patriots. So maybe they weren't counting on it, but if you're Tennessee,
he was right. They didn't turn it over 5 times.
They played 95% of the game well, right? They did so many things well. But specifically, the fumbles by the running backs ended up being absolutely massive because one of them in particular was on a 40-plus yard run. Yeah, by Dante Foreman, that would have changed the entire game if he had just held on to the football. So it was one of those games similar to the Houston game where if they cut those turnovers even in half and they don't have the back-breaking turnovers, that maybe that game is completely different for Tennessee because they played well against the Patriots in both phases outside of that, right? Outside of the 4 turnovers. So that's I think they'll make the playoffs. I think Vrabel will clean that up. That's fundamental stuff that I think Vrabel will be able to clean up. I'm not saying they're going to run the table, but I think they'll make the playoffs.
They're in a good situation because of where they are right now. They probably do, but they got to get A.J. Brown back, and Julio Jones, he should be back as well, right?
Yeah, I don't think that was season-ending. Brown is on IR again now, but that wasn't supposed to be season-ending IR. So we'll see. But those rib injuries are weird. They report negative X-rays initially. Same thing happened with Gronk, right? They report negative X-rays, and then all of a sudden it's a 6 to 8 week injury once they get the MRI results and they really scan the rib cage and get it really in there with the examinations, and they realize, oh crap, he's got 3 cracked ribs, right? I mean, it's those rib injuries the initial X-ray doesn't usually tell you the whole story.
Evan, great job as always. We'll see if the Patriots can keep this run going by the time we talk again following the bye week. So enjoy yourself, and you're not going away, are you? Or are you? That's right, because it's pretty close. Is it you driving or flying?
No, I'm flying, but I'll be there in Buffalo. It's about an hour and 30-minute flight if you can get a direct flight, but they're not a ton of those, unfortunately, just because Buffalo is not, believe it or not a huge tourist city that people go to all the time. So yeah, you have to fly
you're
in
gonna catch
through.
like a hockey game before the football game? Can you do that or no?
No, but maybe some wings. That'd be nice. But yeah, you gotta a lot of the time you gotta fly through like JFK or something like that. Boston to JFK, JFK to
Oh, there's
Buffalo.
Niagara
So
Falls. Have you been there yet?
yeah, that's. I've
Well,
never
there
been
you
there,
go.
so maybe that's on the
So
list.
you
Yeah.
say if you're ever gonna go, you better take advantage of it one of these years that you head to Buffalo when you're still young. Because I don't think you're gonna
Yes.
go there after your football career is over.
Yeah.
Unless of course, you're with the missus and the family, and you have one
Yeah.
of those.
I guess yeah. Maybe she'll convince me to go back to Niagara Falls, but the city of Buffalo. No offense, I nothing against Bills Mafia or any. Don't come after me in my Twitter DMs. All right, none of that. But other than going there for work for a football game, I'm all set.
Well, hey, that's why they're diehard football fans, man.
Yeah,
That they don't have a whole lot
yeah,
else to root for. So they're
yeah.
passionate about their Buffalo Bills. They're going to be passionate on Monday Night Football, which is going to be awesome. Should be a great scene for the
Yes.
NFL, and we'll look forward to talking more about that in a couple of weeks. Evan, appreciate it. We'll check out the post game on Patriots Press Pass. Just half hour after the game?
Yeah, it's half hour. So I go down and do the press conferences, and then we come back up and do the post game
So it's
show.
a late night for you on Monday night.
Very
All right.
late. Yes.
Take care, Evan.
Yeah. Thanks, Greg.